Bluegrass Brooklyn, our podcast all about the music we love, coming to you straight from the bluegrass borough of Brooklyn, New York.
Hambone, where you been? Little Liza Jane, down by the river drinking gin. Little Liza.
So here we are, starting season 2 on Bluegrass Brooklyn.
I hear that only like 1% of people ever make it this far. So kudos to us for doing it.
Yeah, kudos to our listeners for following us along. So I'm wondering, what are you looking forward to this season? I know we have some great plans, but which episodes are you really psyched to present?
Well, just yesterday, I had an awesome interview with Hilary Hawke, a banjo player and musician extraordinaire. She's actually doing a Kickstarter right now for her new album. The music we've got today is from her new album. And so really love to support her in that effort.
Yeah, Hilary's great. We've spoken to her at one of her performances at Jalopy Theater. So what else?
Well, of course, the Jam Jersey recap.
Yes.
I can't wait to hear all the interviews and everything. And of course, Jordan and I are going to be telling you what our experience was during that time, which I could just tell you right now was amazing. I have an episode that we're doing about my road trip out to Pittsburgh and the interviews that I did with some of the classic Pittsburgh folks over there.
Awesome. Bluegrass Pittsburgh. Speaking of on the road, we'll also be presenting an episode which is Bluegrass Australia. I was visiting Sydney, Australia, and got to attend folk festivals and visit a music store, and we had a great time, and there's a lot of wonderful and interesting stuff we uncovered there. Also this May, there's Dell Fest, which is down in Cumberland, Maryland, where I'll be attending the Academy and getting to meet the McCourys and many of the musicians there.
Yeah, I really wish I could sneak away for that. But one year, get down there.
That's right. And the other episode I'm really excited to present is we got to speak with Alex Hargraves, the Brooklyn-based fiddle player who plays with the Billy Strings Band, but also has a lot of really interesting things to say and experiences to impart. So what else for you? So Liz, what else for you on the schedule?
Well, we do have some other homegrown, locally known folks coming up, including, of course, my friend Donna, who is a bluegrasser who's probably headed back to Iowa at the end of this year, and other bluegrass folks that you will know from your Brooklyn jamming that you will love to hear from.
So it sounds like an exciting and interesting season coming up. Do you have any events in mind or anything going on in your uptown jampire?
So yes. So first of all, we're going to start going to Riverside Park more once the weather starts being great on Sundays from 2 to 5 in Riverside Park up at 102nd Street. But another new fun thing is out of the Jam Jersey event, we're going to be starting a jam in South Hackensack at Chris's studio. And we believe it's going to be the third Monday of the month. And of course, it's easy to get to Hackensack from public transportation.
That's exciting.
So that's a new jam that's popping up.
So yet even more bluegrass in the Brooklyn, New York, tri-state area. So we got an exciting season coming up. Today we're going to be talking about Porch Stomp. That's going to be taking place in June. So lots of activity. So why don't we get to it, Liz?
Let's do it. Porch Stomp's an amazing event. Everybody should go.
Yep. And please remember, follow us on Instagram at Bluegrass Brooklyn, spelled BKLYN. There's a Facebook group, Bluegrass Brooklyn. There's even a Bluegrass group for Bluegrass by the Bridge. So you can follow the jam if you're interested in listening and attending. And Liz, where do we find you online?
bluegrassjamsnearme.com. Come on by. We got lots of stuff going on the west side, all the way up through Riverdale with Ron Zwerdling. We have lots of things going on.
All right, let's roll. So we're here with Theo Boguszewski, Brooklyn-based musician and organizer of Porch Stomp, an annual event on Governor's Island here in New York City. And we're going to hear more about that. But first, before we get into that, welcome, Theo.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Thanks for joining. First, let's have some insight into your origin story. How did you wind up here in Brooklyn organizing Porch Stomp and playing bluegrass jams?
I grew up in Berkeley, California. Growing up, I played classical violin and viola. It was something I think that my parents had both wanted me to take seriously. And I didn't really like to practice, and I didn't really like to play by myself. So I didn't take it very seriously, but I did play in the orchestra through high school, and I really liked playing chamber music. I really liked playing with other people. And I did have a little bit of an introduction to folk music and bluegrass music. My dad really loved bluegrass, and he used to take us to shows at the Freight and Salvage in Berkeley. But you know what I do remember as a kid, just not being very into it. Like the shows were really long. We'd be sitting there for what felt like hours and hours watching some old guy play the guitar, and I was kind of like, this is boring, you know?
This doesn't sound promising for a musical career.
What I really liked to do when I was growing up was dance. I was a ballet dancer, and so I did end up going to school for that. I stopped playing music for a long time. I went to school for dance, but I think I realized when I was in college that I didn't really want to be a performer. I didn't like being a performer. I was kind of shy. I liked being more behind the scenes. So I was doing a lot of choreographing. And I went to SUNY Purchase, which, in addition to having a great dance conservatory, has a lot of other amazing arts conservatories, including a music conservatory and an acting conservatory. And my senior year of college, I was thinking that I was kind of bummed that we didn't get to collaborate more with these different disciplines. So I ended up starting an arts collective called the Hoover Dam Collective. And the mission of the Hoover Dam Collective was to produce these interdisciplinary arts events. I continued that for a couple of years out of college. And I think that, you know, right around that same point that I had, you know, taken my fiddle back across the country and was maybe like starting to learn a couple fiddle tunes on my own. But after I graduated from college with a degree in dance, I did what you typically do with a degree in dance, which is that you work in a restaurant. I ended up getting a job at a place called Cowgirl Seahorse. And, you know, a couple of years in, I remember it was right after Hurricane Sandy hit, and we were trying to bring some life back to the restaurant. That whole neighborhood was pretty decimated by the hurricane. They started having live music at Seahorse, and the first band that played was a band called the Crusty Gentlemen. It was a bunch of my dad's friends from college that all still lived on the East Coast. And right around that point, I was like, well, you know, I remember I learned a couple fiddle tunes growing up. And so I got my dad's fiddle from California, and I brought it back with me. And I would sit in with him. So that's how I got back into playing music. I was telling a friend of mine about that, and he was like, oh, I didn't realize you were into that kind of music. Did you know, by the way, I am a childhood friend of Woody Guthrie's grandson? And I was like, wow, that's so cool. And so he told me, yeah, Woody Guthrie's son, this guy named Cole, he goes to this jam up in Astoria. I'll take you if you want to check it out. So he dropped me off at the Keys in Astoria, Queens, where Dave McEwen was running a bluegrass session. And it was there that I met a lot of people who I'm still friends with today. Just a bunch of folks who introduced me to other jams around the scene. I started hanging out at Mona's. I started hanging out at Sheriff Bob's Good Times Jam. It was from there that I kind of just started making all these connections.
Now, how does a aspiring dancer / musician from California show up in Brooklyn and wind up organizing what is one of the premier musical events here in New York City, the annual Porch Stomp on Governor's Island?
I think it was the beginning of 2014 that, you know, I feel like my bluegrass world in New York City just exploded. Like I just started meeting people and checking out all of these different jams. And at one jam, I would find out about another jam. I just really started making this really tight group of friends in this bluegrass music circle and becoming friends with some really, really talented musicians. And it was around that point, I remember I was at Sheriff Bob's Jam that I met a lot of people, including a guy named Nick Horner. And Nick was a vocalist by trade, and he was working for an organization called Make Music New York, started by a guy named Aaron Freeman, who was really inspired by Make Music Day in France, kind of this national day of celebration in France where people just come out into the streets and play music. And he wanted to recreate something like that in New York City. So he started Make Music New York. And, you know, fairly small nonprofit organization, but their mission is to just get as much music as possible of all different genres happening all day long on June 21st, which is the summer solstice. So Nick was working for Make Music New York. He had been tasked with doing a folk festival on Governor's Island. That was kind of his assignment. He showed up at the Sheriff's Jam because he wanted to meet some folk musicians, and he was, you know, trying to get this thing going. So he and I connected. And I helped introduce him to a lot of different people that ended up playing that first year at Porch Stomp. So it took off from there. Within a couple years, we were solidly co-producing the festival together. We were partners in producing the festival probably till around 2019. We were co-producers of the festival. He moved to Knoxville either 2019 or 2020,
Right.
at which point I kind of started taking over. And then as of 2 years ago was sort of his official last year being part of Porch Stomp. That's kind of when I took the helm.
So let's talk about the Porch Stomp Festival that's coming up on June 21st this year in 2025.
Okay.
Describe a day at Porch Stomp. I'm hoping some of our listeners would be interested enough to hop the Governor's Island Ferry at South Ferry, New York, and come and join us. But tell us what the visitor is going to experience when they step off of that ferry.
Well, I'll mention first that there's a couple different ferries you can take. You can also take a ferry from Brooklyn.
Where?
Brooklyn, I should not fear.
Where is the Brooklyn Ferry? Sorry. Let's.
That's okay. You can take it from Brooklyn Bridge Park, from Red Hook, and maybe from Dumbo, if I'm remembering correctly.
Cool.
And you can also take the New York City ferry, which leaves from Wall Street Pier 11. Porch Stomp is a magical day where there's pockets of music happening all over Governor's Island, mostly concentrated in Nolan Park. We also have some music in Colonel's Row and Liggett Terrace. That's where all the food is. We encourage folks to kind of just show up and wander. We will have the listings posted, the schedules for all the stages will be posted live at least a week before the festival with 18 stages. And I think we usually have upwards of 300 artists. Things are bound to change. So schedules that are posted aren't always exactly accurate to what's happening. We really encourage folks, instead of making a schedule and saying, I want to be at this stage at this time and this stage at this time, to just walk around and see what interests you, because there's so many different artists performing. We have more traditional folk music. We have more modern, more experimental type folk music. Most of it is acoustic. I encourage folks just to show up, make your way to Nolan Park, because that's sort of where most of the stages are concentrated, but then wander around. Like when you wander over to get food, you'll walk by the Sonny's Jam, which is happening in Colonel's Row. Right at the entrance of Liggett Terrace, which is the food area. We're also going to be having music both at Three's Brewing and at Little Eva's. Three's is our beer sponsor and Little Eva's is our hot dog sponsor. So thanks to them, every artist who participates in Porch Stomp gets a beer and a hot dog. So yeah, lots of exploring to do. If you find something that you like, lay down a picnic blanket. We encourage folks to buy food on Governor's Island. You can also bring a picnic and just enjoy the day. If you're a player, bring an instrument. There's lots of opportunities to participate. We're also going to have some open dances. So we'll have a contra dance and a square dance. And those are hosted by the North Flatbush Avenue Bids Flatfoot Flatbush stage, which is also where the Old Time Jam is. Lots of opportunities to watch and lots of opportunities to participate.
Does it cost the visitor anything?
Porch Stomp is absolutely free.
Amazing.
I think it costs $5 to ride the ferry, but it's free, I want to say, before 11 if you take the Governor's Island ferry.
Nice. The other side of the coin is, of course, the stages. I will mention, by way of full disclosure, that we will be hosting a Bluegrass Brooklyn stage at Porch Stomp, and our focus is going to be inviting musicians who have done performances or regularly play at the Bluegrass by the Bridge Jam at Delia's Lounge in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. So we have already got a number of groups who have agreed to play. It's a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to hearing what it sounds like. Tell me the wackiest Porch Stomp story that you can recall.
Porch Stomp is rain or shine, and so we've never had a total washout, but we did have in 2017, it rained for about the first 3 hours of and then it was kind of magical because the rain actually hadn't really been forecast. When we looked at the forecast, even the night before, there was a very low chance of rain. And then it just downpoured for like the first 3 hours. But at that point, almost everybody was there, which is kind of the best case scenario. The worst case being that everybody sees that it's going to rain and doesn't show up, and then it doesn't rain,
Right.
So it was the opposite of that. But then in the afternoon, the sun came out. We had everybody who would come with their instruments basically had to adapt, and people were huddled under whatever cover they could find, and they were huddled on porches, and it really created these intimate little concerts where the audience had to get really close because maybe everybody was huddled under one tent, and it was pretty special. And then the sun came out, but as you can imagine, on Governor's Island, these big grassy fields, the rain created a lot of mud. So people were just like playing in the mud, and we had a big square dance, and it was really like messy and dirty, but fun. I don't know. Some people say that was their favorite Porch Stomp.
Amazing. It's like Woodstock, right? A good dose of rain. Let's make sure our listeners know all of the timing. As I understand it, the event starts on Governor's Island at 11 a.m. and runs through 6 p.m. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yep. And is there anything people should know? Bring your own water bottle, bring bug spray, whatever. Anything you advise people to be prepared with?
Definitely bring a water bottle. We won't be selling water on Governor's Island. Governor's Island actually does not allow plastic water bottles, but there's lots of places that you can refill a water bottle. If you like having your cell phone on you, which I definitely appreciate people who don't need to have their cell phone on them all the time, but I always bring an extra battery pack because my phone dies pretty quickly.
Yep.
On the island. It's difficult to get phone service sometimes. And there's not a lot of access to power, which kind of goes hand in hand with our festival being mostly acoustic. I'd also encourage folks to bring a snack. If it's sunny out, it can be a long day in the sun. So definitely bring sunscreen. Make sure that you have a hat. We'll have Porch Stomp hats for sale if you forgot to bring one. But be prepared for kind of a long day outdoors.
Yep, a long, fun day outdoors. Where can people find out more about Porch Stomp if they want to go check it out and learn more in the interim?
Porchstomp.com.
Right. So that's the website for the event, and everything is posted there.
I'll note that we don't have the stages listed yet.
Yep.
As I mentioned, usually the booking process happens through the end of May. If you're looking for an exact lineup, we probably won't have that until about the week before the festival. But as I mentioned, I encourage folks to show up to the festival without an agenda and to just wander.
Yeah, that sounds like more fun. Before we conclude, aren't you involved with the Flatfoot Flatbush event that takes place later in the year?
That's right. Yeah. Porch Stomp hosts two big events throughout the year. And the second one is Flatfoot Flatbush. That is also in partnership with Make Music New York. Make Music New York does a winter solstice event in addition to a summer solstice event. So we take part in their winter solstice event by hosting the Flatfoot Flatbush Parade. And that happens in partnership with the North Flatbush Avenue BID, which is the business improvement district that runs along Flatbush Avenue between Prospect Park and Barclays Center. Flatfoot Flatbush is a lot of fun. It's basically a big old time jam and parade. We have dancers and musicians, and we parade along Flatbush Avenue, and we stop at different businesses along the avenue, and the businesses bring out little treats for the musicians. And it's just a way of bringing some warmth and light and happiness on the darkest day of the year.
There you go. Great sentiment and a lot of fun. Let's turn our attention back to Bluegrass Jams for a second. First of all, our listeners are always interested in knowing what the most popular or frequent songs or what songs we hear in New York City jams, because we've got listeners all over the world.
It's funny. I think that songs kind of go through phases. In the 10 or so years that I've been coming to Bluegrass Jams, certain songs will be really popular and then they'll fade out, and then maybe sometimes they'll come back. Or I tend to associate certain songs with certain people, especially when I first started coming to Bluegrass Jams. I was like, oh, that was a Rick song, or that was an Elio song, or, But it's interesting also to go to different jams in different parts of the country and to hear what songs everybody calls over there and to maybe bring them back to New York City.
I think your response is interesting, that songs come in and out of frequency. I've seen that too, where everybody's calling, or everywhere you go, you hear some song. But then 6 months later, a different one is what everybody hears. I think people are influencing each other because we all migrate from jam to jam. And
yeah, definitely.
I heard, I haven't heard that song in a while. And 100% about jams in other parts of the country. I had the opportunity to travel to Charlotte, North Carolina, and recently to Sydney, Australia, and there's songs we know, but they don't get called typically. And I'm like, wow, I haven't heard that one called in the jam. Yeah. I have never heard anyone call You Are My Flower in New York City, ever. But it's a great song, and it's a relatively simple song, right? I mean, you could call it, but I have never heard it called. And everywhere you go, Blue Ridge Cabin Home, I'll say that. That's a universally popular song.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you one last question. Any unusual experiences or any particular jam experience that sticks in your mind?
I think that those sort of tend to be associated with particular people or particular characters that stand out. I sort of think of Sonny's as kind of being like the mother jam.
Yeah.
Like so many of us started out there and so many of us met there. I feel that way a bit about the Sheriff's Jam as well. But way back in the day, Sonny's used to go until 4 a.m. I just feel like New York was a bit of a different place before the pandemic, and people stayed out later, and the bartenders were into it. And you definitely get some pretty wacky things happening around 3 a.m. And it's kind of crazy now to think that we ever stayed up that late or played music for that long. But the magical thing about that was that You'd get these really amazing professional musicians that would come after their gigs sometimes at like 2 a.m. And that was pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. We have some of that happening nowadays where people migrate from jam to jam, where there's a couple of events in one night and people go from place to place, and you get a very strong sense of community there. Theo, thank you so much for joining, and I really hope that listeners will take the opportunity to check out Porch Stomp online. Come and listen, come and participate in the fun. Thanks a lot for your time. I really appreciate it, and we'll be seeing you around the Jam Circle.
Thanks so much, Mike, for having me.
A little bit about Governor's Island. Governor's Island is in New York Harbor, about 800 yards south of Manhattan Island. It's 172 acres, and from the time of the American Revolution up through the Second World War, it was used by the U.S. military for harbor defense of New York City. Around 1995, it was turned over to the state and the city of New York. Since then, it's been transformed. It's now used as a public space. There's a high school there, there's cultural facilities, and it represents a wonderful repurposing of land and facilities to benefit the people of New York City. The Bluegrass by the Bridge Jam kicks off at Delia's Lounge in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn at 6 p.m. on Wednesdays. And we dropped by to listen in and to speak with some of the folks who attend the jam, who help host the jam. So here we go. Let's hear first from Kat Lewis, who was the featured performance this evening and did several of her original songs and some Hank Williams tunes and so on. So let's hear from Kat.
I forgot all about you when you went away. I haven't even thought about you today. You left me here.
Kat, thank you for joining. You jumped in at the last minute to be our featured performer. What prompted you to come on down to Delia's?
Well, I mean, there was a last-minute request, and I happened to be able to make it. I live not very far away from here, so
Awesome.
I was happy to jump in.
Yeah, that's
Thanks
awesome.
for having me.
But normally we would see you on the first Tuesday night of the month, right?
And you still will.
Yep, so that's at the Sheriff Bob's Good Time Jam. And where is the location of that nowadays?
That's at the Gray Mare. It's on 2nd Avenue between 3rd and 4th Streets.
It's awesome. Now, you threw us a curve. Tell us about your songwriting.
What do you want to know about this
Like, how many have you
endeavor?
written? Do you get to perform them much? And
I'm not really keeping track. I mean, probably triple digits.
Wow.
But that doesn't mean they're good. You know? Yeah,
Well-
you're a songwriter too, I'm discovering tonight.
Well, you know,
so-
where do you get your inspiration? I know for me, it's just, it pops into my head. I don't think about it, I don't plan it, it just comes on out. What about you?
Yeah, I can relate to that. Sometimes an assignment helps. Like someone says,
Oh,
hey, I need you to write a song for this thing, you know, and this thing is like based on a book or something.
Right.
So then I'll have like forced inspiration.
right. Yeah, that gets you going.
Yeah.
So let me ask you another question. What's your favorite song to call it a jam?
Well, it might be the one we just did, High on a Mountain. It's such a fun song. It's got great chords. I love the flat 7 in a song.
Yes.
In a bluegrass song. And so that's one of the reasons I love that song. It's just got a great vibe.
So on Instagram, I think you're Country City Kitty?
Yes.
Yeah,
that
so
is
do
my
you
Instagram
have a band
handle.
or performance venue or anything like that you frequent? Do you
place that
perform regularly or anything
I
like
perform
that?
irregularly. I have a band called Country City, and that's kind of like that's the band that I am the leader of. I also play in a band with Sheriff Bob.
Yep.
We are co-leaders of that band. It's called Sheriff and the Deputy. And I'm also in a drum ensemble called Batala.
Awesome.
That's an all-female drum ensemble. We play Afro-Brazilian music.
Awesome. Well, listen, I don't want to hold you from the jam. Thank you very much for taking time.
Thanks for having me.
First in the room, man, you know, was on so long. And a young man dream of growing up to ride on a freight train leaving town. Not going where I'm bound, and no one can steer me right, but mama's right. One and only rebel.
Here at Delia's Lounge at the Bluegrass by the Bridge Jam, I have a partner and co-host, Sean Kershaw. Sean, thanks for taking a minute.
My pleasure.
So whatever possessed you to agree to come here on Wednesday nights and jam with us and help herd these cats?
I heard there was some picking going on, you know, and it's a quick train ride, and this place has been great.
The lounge puts out snacks for us and
They're
drinks.
the nicest people.
Yeah, it's a really great place. What do you think makes a successful jam?
I think you have to have a clear format. If you have a clear format, then it enables everybody to loosen up and have a good time.
Right, they don't wonder what's going on. Mm-hmm. What's your opinion about people having sheet music and tablets versus from memory?
Well, at my session, I really try to avoid that because I feel that it's about muscle memory and it's a folk tradition. And a folk tradition is an oral tradition. So we're really working on learning each other's stories, including the melodic story.
Yep.
We try not to use any machine tools, as it were, besides our instruments.
Yep, I kind of agree with you. I like having people paying attention to each other.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
to what they're playing. Mm-hmm. What was your favorite song that got called tonight?
Oh God, that's a tough one. Well, Kat's set was fantastic.
That's right.
And well, frankly, I think Kat's other song, "High on a Mountain."
That was her favorite too, by the way. Yeah, I agree. She did a lovely job on that. What's your advice to a new jammer? So someone's going to walk in here for the first time, they're feeling shy, they're not sure what to do. What's your advice?
I'd say get your instrument out and sit on the outskirts and just pick along and just see how you do. Kind of ease into it.
Before we go, you have a jam session on Sundays. Why don't you just tell us when and where it is?
Sundays at Prospect Bar and Grill. That's on 5th Avenue near 15th Street from 4 to 7. Prospect Bar and Grill. # Sunday Bluegrass Session.
And for the listeners, I'll tell you, I'm here doing this because I was there doing that. That jam has nurtured me and got me really musically going. So thank you, Sean.
Well, thank you, Mike.
I left my home in Tennessee. I thought I'd learn to travel. Fell in love with her little girl, and then I played the devil. Loved that girl and she loved me. I thought we'd be together. Then we tied that fatal knot, and now I'm gone forever. Give me back my 50 cents. Give me back my money. Give me back my 50 cents, and I'll go home to man. Good, Sean. Well, thanks everybody for listening. I really hope that you will come out to Porch Stomp. Theo put so much of her heart and energy into this event, as you can hear from what she shared with you. And it's a classic New York, you're only going to see this in New York City kind of event. So we hope you'll come. Yep. And don't forget, the podcast, Bluegrass Brooklyn, is curating a stage where you'll hear a lot of the musicians who have performed at the Bluegrass by the Bridge Jam. And towards the end of the day, we'll probably just have Big Mike and the South Brooklyn Ramblers. That's me and whoever feels like playing to fill out the day. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to it. So Liz, I think that's it. Let's look forward to the next episode. Yes, come on by and hear about Jam Jersey. We look forward to seeing you around the Jam Circle.
I saw you